What's up, RotoViz?
Into the RotoViz Fantasy Football Show. I'm Dave Caban alongside Curtis Patrick. We are two of the owners here at RotoViz, coming back to you again in both podcast and live stream format. It will be available later on for everybody that would like to watch it on YouTube. The replay will be there. But Curtis, we have a very special episode tonight. Before I explain what we're going to be doing, let me just ask, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing great. So this is show 2 from the new room in the house. When we had Scott Baird on earlier this week, I had literally just hours before relocated the studio to what was formerly the play den for the kids. So I have all this new space, but as you can see, I've still got like kids' artwork and the little like Hobby Lobby signs in this room. Like I have not made it into the new RotoViz command center yet. So that'll be a project for the next couple weeks, but that's really fun. And I mean, we're talking Dynasty tonight, so that always puts me in a great mood, and we're going to get to cut up one of your teams. But before we kind of get into the topics, I want to hit us with an FFPC stat attack. All right. We've got Jalen Tolbert, Dave, out of South Alabama. And I've been looking into kind of these guys outside our top 2 tiers of the wide receiver position in the prospect box score scout on rotoviz.com. And I've just been getting more and more impressed with the comps that I'm seeing for him. So first off, Jalen Tolbert, for those of you that are not familiar, 4-year player out of South Alabama, broke out as a sophomore. He's an older sophomore, so he's a 20-year-old sophomore, but broke out with a 35% dominator, a true breakout, and then followed it up with 42% dominators in his junior and senior seasons. Scored at least 6 receiving touchdowns in each of those seasons and averaged at least 16.9 yards per reception in his final 3 seasons. So this is a big-time playmaker. He's 6'3", 195, kind of shades of an AJ Green type frame. Obviously not the same type of high profile entering college, but Dave, when you put his peripherals into the prospect box score scout, his sims are incredible. So I give him 193 pounds, a 4.45 40, which I think is very mid-range for him. He could easily outperform that. All 10 of Jalen Tolbert from tiny South Alabama, all 10 of his top sims were first-round NFL draft picks. I mean,
oh my God.
Crazy. That's crazy, man. His top sim is Amari Cooper. Then you get Devontae Smith, Devontae Parker, AJ Green, Kendall Wright, Michael Floyd, Corey Coleman, Justin Blackman, AJ Jenkins, OBJ. I mean, this is an incredible list. Now, some of these players obviously flopped in the NFL, but as prospects, they all had great profiles. So to have a 50% hit rate for like at least one wide receiver 1 season, I think, on that list, or at least one a pair of wide receiver 2 seasons and several high-end wide receiver 1 seasons when you're talking Amari Cooper and AJ Green. I mean, this is a great list. So I think he's a little bit of a mover as I have more time to consider his profile. But anything stick out there for you, Dave, with Jalen Tolbert?
I mean, I guess just what this drives home for me is why it's important to look at every prospect, regardless of what you might have heard talked about them, where they're coming from, because sometimes there are just these players out there that just, you can find all these nuggets of gold in their profile. You look in the tools and you're just going to be really, really surprised. And I think that's why the more diligent you are with this stuff and the more that you dig in, the better off your dynasty teams are going to be, because you have to know about these players to really get that edge.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the benefit of time that we have right now between now and the NFL Combine. So it's not the last player we'll highlight in the FFPC stat attack. And Dave, speaking of the FFPC, we are going to talk about one of your FFPC Dynasty Squad. So give us a quick hit here and let's change the topic. So I thought for tonight's episode and for some episodes in the upcoming weeks, we could highlight a few of the teams that you and I are working on. I mean, we're not just talking about fantasy, we're playing fantasy. We've got a large portfolio between the two of us, and we both love Dynasty. We've talked a little bit of best ball. We've talked, prospects, but I want to get into some Dynasty roster management. And Dave, you've got a $77 FFPC Dynasty Squad that you wanted us to take a look at tonight. Why don't you give us a little bit of background on this team, how long you've been in this league, and then let's pull some stuff up on the screen and let's get to work.
So, as you mentioned, $77 FFPC league, regular structure of an FFPC league here, just one quarterback. I believe that this will be heading into the 5th year in the league.
Oh, wow.
When I originally drafted this team, I went super wide receiver heavy. I've had to make a couple of moves then in pushing for championships. Actually, last year felt like not the 2021 season. The 2020 season really felt like it was going to be the year. Made a pretty strong push, didn't come away with the title. But I did not have as much time to dedicate to getting this roster ready to go in 2021 or managing it as I would have liked. So I actually would say that this team's kind of in shambles right now in comparison to what I was thinking it would have been, heading into the 2020 season. As we will see, we really have to do some things on this squad to address the needs at running back. Receivers overall are pretty solid, but I think at this point, it's not as strong of a group as I would have been hoping for. So this is kind of the exercise of how do you turn around a team that has some pieces to it. There's probably some backbone to this squad that we could use to carry it forward, but it's kind of been neglected for maybe a year and a half. What are some of the things that we can do?
Yeah, this is like one of my favorite things to do. So this is going to be really fun. And, kind of to sum that up before we look at the actual assets on your squad and plan your next moves. I mean, managing a dynasty squad, even in the context of a portfolio, it's like every dynasty squad is its own bonsai tree. And you have to constantly prune it to keep it healthy. And they're all going to grow a little bit differently. And they might not look exactly how you would expect. Some are going to be fuller. Some are going to have more branches. And, each league that you have, it's a different climate. It's a different environment. And you still got to fight against all that stuff to make it work, man. And that's why Dynasty is so cool. So let's take a look at what you got here. For those not familiar with the 1 QB Dynasty format on the FFPC, you start one quarterback. You start a pair of running backs. You start 2 wide receivers and 2 flexes. And then you actually have a tight end and a tight end premium scoring. And you still have a kicker and a defense. Now, RotoViz partnered with FFPC last year to launch our RotoViz Triflex Dynasty League. So if you don't like playing with a kicker or defense, you can check out those startups. They'll open later this month. We also introduced the requirement of starting a 3rd wide receiver, and there's a super flex spot. So for those that are looking at this squad that we're going to talk about tonight and thinking, hey, I'd like, maybe a more progressive option, that's out there too. And we'll talk about one of those squads in the weeks to come. So Dave, I think the first thing that I noticed here, it's the off season, but you got Matt Ryan in your starter spot and you got Carson Wentz. It's a 1 QB league, so that doesn't really, bother me too much. Let's come back to that. You've got the big man, Jonathan Taylor. And anytime we talk Taylor, I obviously pull the Colonel Taylor bourbon. So that's what I'm drinking tonight when I saw this squad. So, we don't need any work there at RB1. And really, Taylor's giving you a running back and a half worth of production each week. So let's talk about these receivers. You've got Tyreek Hill, AJ Brown, and Keenan Allen. I mean, these are all like, mid-prime or mid to late prime guys. In the case of Keenan Allen, that's a bona fide trio. So you must be talking about the depth. We look at Chase Claypool and then a bunch of other like kind of sort of what are they guys? Rondell Moore, Diami Brown, Laviska Shenault, KJ Osborne, which was a nice pickup for you on waivers last year, I assume. DJ Chark, William Fuller now.
Yes, William.
I should be sure to say. And Khalif Raymond. So, this is a team that has the makings of a really exciting starting lineup or a starting lineup core, but then it does feel very thin. What are you most excited about on this team? And then what do you think your biggest priority is? And then I'll tell you what I think your biggest priority is.
Well, I think that obviously I'm super excited about having Jonathan Taylor moving forward and having that anchoring group of wide receivers. I noticed that you mentioned the Matt Ryan and Carson Wentz. Normally, I don't carry two quarterbacks. I was kind of forced into that. To be honest, I forget exactly why. And then, I was so inactive here that I didn't even go ahead and try to rectify that by the time the season ended. So I would like to maybe do something to kind of upgrade a little bit at quarterback, because I think that Matt Ryan, isn't really going to get it done week to week. Carson Wentz, probably not. It would be nice to have somebody a little bit more stable in there. And then I do think I need to get a little bit more depth at running back. And then one of the things that I'm really curious about is trying to find some type of package to pull in a fourth wide receiver that I could rely on a little bit more. And then maybe not need to carry so many wide receivers, but have maybe two younger players that I'm hoping develop.
Yeah, I think that's the makings of a pretty good blueprint there. We're going to have to see what the other teams in your league have. We should also mention Dave's picks. This time of year, it's important to understand, the specific pick slot. He's actually got all 7 rounds worth of picks in the FFPC. There will actually be a cut down. So we also have to think about that. Some of the players that are on Dave's roster, he's going to have to throw back for free and would have to potentially, spend a pick to get them. But things didn't really bounce well for this team. Last year, Dave missed the playoffs. He's got the 104. So that's actually pretty exciting when you talk about, the overall context of this roster. I'm counting 3 top 18 overall assets in this format. And Jonathan Taylor, Tyreek Hill, and A.J. Brown. And Keenan Allen's probably still a top 36 asset, maybe even, top 30. So, the core's there, and you're going to get to add a top 5 pick here. So we've definitely got some stuff to work with. Here's the list that I came up with for you, Dave, your off-season priorities. Okay. So the first thing, you're in year 5. There could have been some turnover. Admittedly, you said you kind of neglected getting this team ready last year. So just early on, we got to build the trade relationships. I don't know if you have any trades that you've made with any of the owners in this league over the years that you could kind of go back on. I find that, pulling the trigger successfully on one trade tends to, pave the way for future trades, because you've now proven that you guys can negotiate and come up with something that's, mutually beneficial, at least in your eyes. And then I think you've got a couple of different ways that you could go in terms of making this team playoff ready. And that's really all you need to do. With the high-end guys that you have on this squad, if you just get into the playoffs, you could easily win. Could easily win. So my first idea is for you to go bully tight end 1. You've got Cole Kmet. We like Cole Kmet. And you've got Adam Trautman. And, with the change at quarterback potentially, in New Orleans, maybe we get a little bit of something from him in year 3. But you could also just have total flops at both of these spots. Mm-hmm. And if it's going to be a lot easier, I think, for you to identify, maybe not a Kelsey level, but if I think you could probably go out and buy Mark Andrews or George Kittle. Probably not Kyle Pitts, but I think if you were willing to pay, you could get a guy like that on this squad. And then that bully tight end 1 really is a weekly advantage for you at that position.
Yes. Yes.
Or we need to get a better tight end 2 hedge on Kmet. So if you can get somebody in that Freiermuth or Fant range, those are guys that we're already drafting in best ball. Adding a player like that would be a little cheaper, but give you a hedge in case Kmet doesn't bust out. Or if they both end up busting out, perhaps you end up using one of those guys in your flex. Then it would be running back 2. I think tight end is my priority for this squad. Running back 2 would be my secondary priority. I've identified an opportunity to consolidate some of your bench wide receivers for draft picks or pick upgrades, even if you can't get an outright draft pick for them. And then the 104 is also a really attractive tradable chip. We could spend it, or maybe we don't want to spend it. You and I have talked about having kind of a top 2 tier. We talked about that with Scott Barrett earlier this week in this 1 QB format. It's really Treylon Burks and Breece Hall, and then, a gap for us. Yeah. And so you're into that next tier. Perhaps you could trade back to the 1-6, 1-7, 1-8, and still get a player in that second tier, that 1B tier, upgrade the team, but get something else out of that. And then luxuries, it's funny that you say, hey, I'd love to upgrade that quarterback position. If we could get a developmental Konami code QB, on the cheap, maybe players that would even be cut, will Zach Wilson be cut in the trim down, stuff like that. I think that we look at. It's not necessarily that we need to draft Malik Willis in the rookie draft. It's not necessary that you go try to trade for Josh Allen or something. But I think a player that could become, like the next Jalen Hurts or the next Dak Prescott, that's what we're looking for. So what do you think about these notes? Are you into it, or is there anything that scares you here?
Well, I actually just want to say for the people that are listening, before we even get into my comments on them, I like the way that you laid this out as you were thinking about the different things that I could do. So actually, Curtis, can you list off the bullet points? I'm not sure if you're scrolled all the way up there that you kind of had, and like how you organized this.
Oh yeah,
people listening.
Yeah, I think they're visible on the screen here.
Yep.
So,
okay. Yep.
So yeah, really, the first and most important thing strategically is to build those trade relationships.
Okay. Yep.
Then,
we had that.
Yeah,
yep.
Yeah, and then upgrading tight end. There's 2 paths for that.
Okay. Yeah. No. Yeah. So I guess I meant kind of like the bullets. So you had build trade relationships. Think about trades, then movable assets, where you kind of listed where you see what I'm saying?
Oh yeah. So you had your priorities, your movable assets, and then your luxuries.
Luxuries. Okay. Yeah.
Because that's really, you can't do it all at once, and you kind of want to go in order of importance here. And you also have to think about like the whole context. If you just start firing off random trades without a clear goal in mind, it gets kind of frustrating or even difficult to track the progress that you're making. But this was a simple exercise. I mean, you sent me over your roster. It took me 3 minutes of looking at it to come up with. And if you're playing in 10 leagues, spend a half hour. Now you got your off-season blueprint. You know what I mean?
Yep. Yeah, I like the way that you laid that out. So I guess my thoughts would be I am perfectly cool with trying to work to get a solid tight end. As I'd mentioned, kind of trying to consolidate wide receiver sounds perfect. So these are all things that are appealing to me. None of it really makes me that uncomfortable. In regard to the building trade relationships, that piece I think could be a little bit tough. I have tried to make a number of trades in this league, but I generally find I have struggled to be able to conduct trades that felt fair to me at all. In fact, the year that I was really pushing to win, I had to make what I know a lot of people would think would be a terrible trade. I forget my tight end situation, but I had a guy that I liked. He was going to become unavailable. There was no way to easily get into a tight end I thought was going to be serviceable. I actually had to move Robert Woods for Hayden Hurst. That's how hard it was to actually get a trade done.
Yeah. Okay. I got it. Well, there's a couple of things at play there. The tight end premium plus in this format on FFPC, and this is why we worked with them to create an alternative for those that want different, value situation. I mean, wide receiver really is devalued beyond those, uber elite guys like the ones that you have on your roster. So it would be very natural for, even in his prime, 27-year-old Robert Woods may not have gotten even a late first in return. Whereas in a start 3, with 3 flex type leagues that many of us play in the private invite side of the industry, Woods would be worth a mid first at his peak. So yeah, it is a different situation. I've been there, and it is every platform's a little bit different, but I think you can get there. We just have to understand what the other guys in your league or gals are going to value and think like they would be thinking. And that's the other piece to this. And I think this is where, kind of dovetails in nicely on the FFPC. I really like this view from the league management page, and it just lays out each roster by position. You can kind of just scroll across, and then you have this narrow band of their draft picks as well. So it's very easy to pair up your roster, with the other rosters in the league. So the first thing we're going to do, we've said we want to identify a bully tight end 1 situation. So we need to look at each of these rosters, find out where those elite tight ends are, and look at their roster context. Is there something that we can put together that makes sense for them? I don't think it makes sense to offer a trade for Kyle Pitts. He's not going to be touchable. I don't want to waste our time on that. He would be exciting to add. I just don't think it's going to work. Okay, so here's the Darren Waller owner. Waller is approaching 30. I don't think Waller's going to be easy to get, though. I'm going to guess this guy's got championship on the brain, Dynasty War. He thinks he's competing this year. He's got Herbert. He's got Dalvin Cook and Christian McCaffrey, along with Saquon Barkley and Antonio Gibson. This is a very classic high-end FFPC squad with all of this concentration around the running back position. And then he's got a solid wide receiver core, and then Darren Waller. So Darren Waller is very important to his title hopes this year. It's not a good match. We'll keep scrolling. Let's see. We've got Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews is on the Plow Horse squad. This is a little bit of a mixed bag. At running back, he does have two exciting chips in DeAndre Swift and Javonte Williams. He's probably got very high hopes there. He has nothing at wide receiver to write home about. This is a collection of low-end wide receiver 2s and wide receiver 3s and wide receiver 7s, basically. We like Hollywood Brown. We like Robert Woods and Mike Williams, but none of those guys are anything in this type of format beyond like flex level players. Only the top 24 receivers really truly matter in this format. I think Andrews is worth probably starting some conversation for. Then we get, unfortunately, we see Travis Kelce and George Kittle on the same roster here.
I have spent a lot of time trying to get one of those players from the runner of this team.
Yeah, Andres Johnson. So yeah, I think he.
Which hold on, can we pause there for a second?
Yeah.
I feel like every league that I'm in, I come across an Andres Johnson team. Everybody. At this point, it is a very played out name. It's no longer relevant. It's not clever. It's not witty. Can we let the Andres Johnson names go to rest?
I mean, it's from your ears to the communities, Dave. I don't think those are ever going away.
Oh, God.
They're just not ever going to go away.
Oh, God. All right.
But unfortunately, I think for us in this exercise, Andres Johnson, he probably built this squad on the idea that, hey, it's tight end premium, and he wants to have not just a bully tight end 1, he wants a bully tight end 2.
Yep.
I think you're going to have to pry those guys. You're not even going to be able to pry one of those tight ends out of his, cold dead hands. So let's move on to Sonny Weaver. Sonny Weaver's got Pat Freiermuth and Noah Fant and Dallas Goedert. So we have 3 lower end tight end 1s. Let's check out what else he's got. Maybe this is a potential trade partner. This is actually a squad probably constructed similar to how you desire to construct your squad, Dave. So we've got DJ Moore, we've got Juju and DK Metcalf. We've got Judy as a potential high upside player. Christian Kirk. He's got honestly, this is a very similar roster to yours, other than the tight end position just being a little richer. This manager has the 1-8 and the 2-3. So I think if we were going to construct a trade, we'd want to offer the opportunity to move from 1-8 to 1-4. So let's put a pin in that. And then I think the last squad to look at here, we've got an Ertz Gesicki team. Let's scroll back away from that one and go back up to your boy Dawson, Knox, and Dalton Schultz on this other squad.
Yes.
This manager does not even have a first round pick. So that's another interesting situation. I wonder if we would be able to do your 1-4 plus an asset for Dawson, Knox, and potentially an RB2 upgrade. Let's look at this roster. It's actually pretty gross at running back too, so that's not going to be the path. But perhaps you would be able to pry, T. Higgins or even Brandon Ayuk out of that deal, and maybe upgrade that flex 2 position on your squad. So having now looked at these rosters, I think those are a couple trade ideas for your tight end situation. We can target the Schultz and Knox owner. We can target the Andrews owner, and we can target the Freiermuth, Fant, Goddard owner. So that's a little bit of a concentration. Any of these squads stand out to you as a potential partner, Dave?
I think the team that had the 3 tight ends seems like it'd be workable, but also the team 2 that doesn't have the round 1, I feel like that's probably the most likely for me to be able to get the ball rolling there.
Yep. The pick upgrade from 1-8 to 1-4, and then the team with no first. So let's concentrate just on those 2. See if we can even come up with an offer that you can make while we're on the podcast here. So we'll focus on Sonny Weaver Jr. first. Upgrading from 1-8 to 1-4. That's going to be important for this manager in FFPC. He's thinking, I'm going to miss out on all of these early round 1 rookie draft running backs at the 1-8. not going to have access to any of them. So this is going to be a pretty valuable pick. He does have Joe Mixon and Derrick Henry. Dave, he's got Rashad Penny on this squad.
He does.
Yeah. What I'm kind of thinking here is the 1-4, and we've got to give him something coming back here. Let's do like the 1-4, and maybe Rondale, maybe Diami, or maybe even just Cole Kmet going back the other direction. But it'd be great to pull Freiermuth and Penny out of that deal. Then you've still got your first. You've upgraded, or at least got a player you can feel more confident about at that RB2 spot, and you've upgraded tight end. I think that you will at least get some sort of counter there. I think we're going to have to add a name brand piece to the 1-4 to make this happen. So honestly, any of these guys on your bench, other than Visca, I'm holding out a little hope for Visca with Doug Peterson in town now. I think any of these other guys I'd be willing to throw in to make that deal happen. Anybody standing out?
Well, I guess I was going to ask the players that I'm not sure how people are going to value them right now are DJ and William. Has William Fuller lost all name recognition at this point, do we think?
Has William Fuller maybe he literally has lost his name. I was so used to seeing Will Fuller V for the last couple of years. He's been so ouchy. I don't think he's going to be worth anything in FFPC, but I do think that potentially Rondale Moore would be worth something. And even if you did have to surrender Laviska Shenault, if that's the flavor for that Sonny Weaver would prefer there. And he does seem to be a manager that likes his wide receivers. That actually might play in your favor. Maybe he would give value to any of these guys that you would potentially offer. I think I'm more okay with letting Laviska off the squad than you are. I'm not entirely attached to him too, so that is something I will consider. All right. I threw this comment up here from our friend Calvin Hobby over at Dynasty League Football. Appreciate seeing you in the chat, buddy. I'm actually going to be stopping by his show here in the next couple weeks to chat with him. So it's cool to see him. And Dave, looks like you just got yourself a sub and a follow on the channel here. So
I'll make sure to follow him back if I'm not.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah. And then let's look at this other squad here for the other tight end idea. I believe that was going to be the
let's see.
Is it your Knox and Schultz team, or do you want to try to make an offer from? Okay, let's go for Knox and Schultz.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, so this is a squad that doesn't really have any way of helping you at running back, but because this other squad is also needy at running back, I mean, this manager is just going to be absolutely lusting after the 1-4. Yep. Unfortunately for you, that means you're going to have to ask for a pretty high-end asset coming back out of his wide receiver core, because obviously Schultz and Knox are not going to move the meter too much. They might be worth a mid-second each in this format. With the roster cut downs, etc. So I think your two ideas here, you could potentially offer the 2-4 for Knox, your boy. It feels a little bit aggressive, but I think it's reasonably fair. And it has a high chance of being accepted as is. And then, you can just kind of move on. Or if we want to, kind of double down and make an upgrade there as well, perhaps you offer the opportunity to move from Keenan Allen to T. Higgins. And you buy all those years back. I think something like that, and including your first, and then asking for his maybe early third back, or late second if he's got an extra late second. Let's find this squad here. No, he's got the 2-2 and the 3-2. I think you could ask for a future second, maybe his 23 second or his 22 third, and get something like that to work. So there's a couple trade ideas there. Running back 2, if we want to move on to the next potential trade partner, if we strike out on the tight ends, we got to figure out what type of guy you want. Are you looking for somebody in that penny range that could, the other manager would feel like they're selling high, or do you want to just buy somebody that's, you know, already a high-end RB2 or low-end RB1? What's your appetite?
I kind of think I want to go for somebody that's already established.
So you want to trade that 1-4 straight up for a player? That's kind of.
I think I'd be interested in trade. Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
Because honestly, with the 1-4, I mean, Breece Hall isn't going to be there.
No.
And even at that, I'm not entirely sure that I would rather have him than somebody established at this point.
So we're either going to have to go for probably one of the injured, recovering young guys like a J.K. Dobbins or Cam Akers, or you're going to have to go for a player that's already, you know, in the first year or two of the second contract, and you'll have to accept the extra age, but you're really trying to, you know, catch lightning in a bottle, pairing that back with Taylor and your stud wide receivers to get it done. So that kind of funnels us into a very specific range of player. The Slad lot does not have that. Sonny Weaver, we've already talked about, you know, as a potential trade partner. He does own Rashad Penny. Also, Joe Mixon feels like a player that, you know, 1-4, even Derrick Henry. I think there's a lot to look at here. We wouldn't necessarily want to surrender it for Henry straight up, but I think it would probably even cost you more than that in this format. So focusing in on Penny in the tight end deal, or just going for Mixon and trying to balance that out, that could make some sense. Andres Johnson, we've already talked about. I don't think he has enough to help you there. Plowhorse does have DeAndre Swift and Javonte Williams, but I think this manager is very likely to want more than the 1-4. So it's going to depend on what your appetite. Now, this manager does not have any picks before round 5 in the draft.
Wow.
So if you were willing, I think, to do the 1-4 and the 2-4, perhaps you could pry Williams or Swift. I think that's at least fair to start the discussion. Or you go with your 1-4 and your 23 first, and you ask for his 22 second back. I think those are two ways to offer that trade in a way that's not offensive to the other manager and potentially could get it done. Then we go to Forever Faithful. I don't see the type of back that, you know, we're really wanting there. Or for Nigel Gruff. We go up to Meatballs. This is a manager that has Najee Harris. I don't think you're going to be able to give up what it would take to go after Najee here. And then Dynasty War, they have the 1-9. So I think this is a situation where if you are willing to take a chance on Barkley, you know, maybe you could do something like Barkley in the 1-9 for your 1-4 and 2-4. It's a very risky trade, a high risk, high reward trade. And I think a similar deal could potentially work for Antonio Gibson. So those are the other deals that I see. Anything sticking out in these conversations as offers you might make?
Well, I think I'm definitely going to try and work that team that does not have a pick until the 5th round. Also, I forget, is that is not the team that we looked at that has Swift and Williams, is it? Or no, that is the team. Definitely the team I'm going to try to go with, because I find both of those players to be pretty intriguing options. And then also they don't have much in the way of wide receiver. So I feel like there's a lot of options at different positions, different configurations for me in trying to make a move with that team that could be beneficial on both sides.
Yeah, I think you can do that. You probably have to get into including Chase. I think you're going to have to include Chase Claypool in the deal, probably. But we like enough wide receivers in this draft. I feel okay about that. Right. You know, I feel if you're able to keep your 204 in the deal and sacrifice a receiver instead, we obviously like a lot of these second round receivers. It is deeper, I think, than many people are willing to admit this season. So, okay, so there's what we've got in terms of trade ideas. You know, hopefully you can fire some of those off this week, Dave, and we can report back, see if you get any counters or hopefully even some accepts, and drive this team towards a trophy next season. And then I think, you know, in terms of the Konami code developmental QB, that's probably something we're looking to do maybe when you're on the clock in the draft. Or you could maybe even just prioritize waiver dollars after the cut downs. There's a lot of these teams, it looks like, carrying 3+ quarterbacks, and I'm not sure they're going to be able to carry all of them. Well,
you know what's going to be interesting too, Curtis, not to kind of cut you off there, but it seems like there continues to be a lot of chatter about the Eagles and other quarterbacks coming in and taking over for Jalen Hurts. So, I'm going to be paying close attention to that too and see if he's a guy I can get on the team. Because even if he's not contributing right away, or I have to wait this year, it's hard to think that at some point we're not going to see him, if it's not with the Eagles, getting a shot with another team. I know we've already talked about that before, but it's something to keep in mind now as these stories collect, and it makes him an easier guy to get on your roster.
Honestly, I think all this chatter is still other squads saying the Eagles want to upgrade at quarterback to try to see what's out there. We heard it all last season, and the team, I guess you can argue that it's like the dreaded vote of confidence, but I haven't seen anything that would lead us to believe that the locker room doesn't want Jalen Hurts to be the guy, or that the coaching staff doesn't want Jalen Hurts to be the guy. And they have all these picks, and this is the weak quarterback class. So, I guess if it worked out for you to bring on Russell Wilson or, another movable quarterback that's not named Deshaun Watson, because that was talked about so much last year. Maybe they could get it done. Maybe could Aaron Rodgers end up there? I don't know.
But I guess the other layer is too, if there is something that happens, then it looks like there's a lot of scenarios in which A, he either becomes the team that they do the deal with their quarterback, or B, he becomes one of these quarterbacks that's going to fill in on an opening that's created somewhere else, especially as you said, with it not being the greatest quarterback class. So that's why I will feel okay.
All right. Well, Dave, I think we've got some good homework assignments for your $77 FFPC Dynasty Squad. I want to take a look at one of my orphans in a similar exercise next week. Perhaps we'll get some of your notes for what you think I could do. And I'll also run kind of down through the same exercise, with kind of my own leanings on how I would want to improve it. But, hopefully this is something that for those of you that are watching the live stream, obviously get a little bit of extra flavor in this episode. And so if you're listening on the podcast and, you would like the visuals, you can come find this episode on YouTube or on my Twitter or the RotoViz official Twitter. And you can see some of the notes laid out there that we talked about throughout the podcast, but hopefully we described the exercise well enough that it still landed in audio form only.
Yes. I really like the way you laid it out, Curtis. I think that's a good framework for some people out there to kind of use and consider as they start looking at their dynasty rosters. I think what would be cool too is maybe if we visit this exercise once or twice more and we let people send in their rosters. Maybe at some point we can even do some type of contest or something, and then like the winner gets to have us look through their roster, can make some recommendations, what have you. It's just always a really fun exercise. And I also think that the layer that we didn't even get into that much when kind of running through this team too, sometimes it helps you to realize the way that you actually value certain players. When you're actually thinking about like, what would I really give up for this player? So it's a good way to also kind of check in on where you are on the different players that make up your team, so that when you inevitably get offers, you're kind of ready and you have a bit of a plan that you can go off of.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I appreciate the kind words. Let's see if any of these trades are successful next week, and we will be back with our second big guest on our 5-week Dynasty not Dynasty, but RotoViz Fantasy Football podcast guest tour. Danny Kelly joins the pod next week.
Thank you for listening to the RotoViz Fantasy Football Show. Send us questions at rvffshow@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter at Dave Caban FF and at CPatrickNFL. Leave us a voicemail at 978-615-9214 and make sure to rate, review, and subscribe.